Anyway, welcome to the Edinburgh process for subnational and local governments. And this is on the development of the Convention on Biodiversity post-2020 and the Global Biodiversity Framework. So if you're not interested in that, then I suggest you leave. But that's what this meeting is about. And it's and I am Professor Sir Ian Boyd from the University of St Andrews, and I have been asked to chair this process. It's a great pleasure from my point of view. So I'll be chairing this regional information session on behalf of the Scottish Government and the Edinburgh process partners. And both John Mowat and Sue Campbell will be assisting me through that as moderators, and they are with the Scottish Government. The aim of this session is to take you through what we will be calling the Edinburgh process, and to explain how you can contribute to the development of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. And including the updated subnational plan of action and the Edinburgh Declaration. So I think we now move on to slide 2. So I'm kind of looking to Sue, I think, to move the slides on. And I'm going to turn to Sue because we have a welcome from Rosanna Cunningham, who's the Cabinet Secretary for Environment and Climate Change and Land Reform in the Scottish Government. So over to you, Sue.
Thank you, Sir Ian. Maybe just before I do that, we've just got a couple of housekeeping things to add.
Oh, I apologise. I should have noticed that. So I do apologise.
That's all right. Do you want me to run through those?
Yeah, please do. Please do. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so really lovely to welcome you all onto this Zoom meeting. I'm sure some of you will have used Zoom before, so just to remind you all that if you could stay muted whilst you're not talking, so that we can help reduce the background noise. The participant list in Zoom allows you to raise your hand when you would like to ask a question. There's also a chat panel as well, in which I can see some of you have already started to use. You can raise questions and issues in that chat panel. As we go through the slides, there will be at certain points where we will ask people if they've got any questions to raise. And we'll look at the chat function, but you can also use the raise hand function. If you've asked questions in the chat and we're not able to address those questions within the time frame that we have for this session, then we'll be able to look at those questions and answer them after this session. So that's really all the housekeeping things to attend to.
Excellent, Sue, thank you. So if you just want to move on to the welcoming address from Rosanna Cunningham, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Ian. Obviously, Ms Cunningham, who is our Cabinet Secretary for the Environment, Climate Change and Land Reform, she would have liked to have addressed you in person and to be able to highlight how the development of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and the role of subnational and local governments is a priority for Scotland. However, as you can imagine, our government, as well as others around the world, are dealing with the COVID-19 situation. So she can't be with us today, but she's very supportive of the process. And she wants to, well, on behalf of the Scottish Government, we'd like to thank everybody for taking part in these online sessions. We're delighted that the workshop that had been planned for Edinburgh, although it can't go ahead, that we find a way forward and are able to continue this work. And we recognise that subnational and local governments have a vital role to play in protecting biodiversity. And it's absolutely right that our views and expertise will help to inform future action. And we're delighted to be leading this consultation process alongside our partners. So thank you all again for taking part, and we really look forward to working with you all as we move forward to protect the richness and diversity of our planet in the months and the years ahead. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you very much, Sue. So we're going to move on to another welcoming address from Jyoti Martha Philippe, who's the Divisional Director of the CBD Secretariat. So I'm just going to ask Sue if you could run that, actually. Thank you.
I will run it. Some of you, we had technical problems with this video, so some of you might not be able to see the video, but you should be able to hear the audio stream. If you can't see the video, then we will make it available to view through our Attendify app, which we'll tell you about later. Let me see if I can play this.
Dear participants, on behalf of the Acting Executive Secretary, I would like to thank the governments of Scotland and the United Kingdom as organisers of this web consultation for allowing me to share a few words with you from the perspective of the Convention on Biological Diversity. I would also like to thank Italy and Regions 4 for their support to this process. This consultation arose from a lesson the Convention learned about 10 years ago. The campaign for life on Earth cannot be won without the full participation of all levels of government, from federal to national to subnational and local. And cities increasingly are part of the problem, but also the solution. Let's consider some facts. By 2030, nearly two-thirds of the world's population will be living in cities, tripling the urban coverage, which stands today at 3% to 9%. Recent research indicates that 16% of existing key biodiversity areas will be impacted by this urban expansion within the next 10 years. This will have a serious impact on biodiversity. However, cities are also a source of innovation in transport, industry, and medicine, and even agriculture. So thereby, this could have a positive impact on nature.
Sorry.
Innovation in transport, industry, and medicine, and even agriculture. So thereby, this could have a positive impact on nature. Since 2007, the CBD Secretariat has been working with parties, UN agencies, and international organizations, networks and associations of subnational and local governments to address this realization. And since 2008, parallel summits have been regularly held at the Conference of the Parties. In 2010, at COP10, a plan of action for the engagement of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities was endorsed. The Global Partnership and the advisory committees started working. Regular updates and publications on this work have been provided since through Nature articles, NUCA, and CBOs. Subnational and local action is essential for reasons such as harmonization of policies and resources across all levels of government, management of ecosystems and natural resources, and productive land and seascapes, as well as connectivity of protected areas, often fall to subnational governments. Urban-rural linkages, teleconnections related to food and water security, fiber, energy, and health are often managed at subnational and local levels. Urban expansion and sprawl itself will affect key biodiversity areas, but the consumption footprint of cities goes much beyond. We're just beginning to measure and test their governance. The post-2020's ambitious goals can only be met with the full support and engagement of local and subnational governments. We hope and count on your support. Thank you for your attention.
Well, that was a very welcome message, and what we'd like to do now is to move on to look at how the Edinburgh process has been brought together. And the Edinburgh process has been led by the Scottish Government, but it's only been possible through the input and support of the Edinburgh process partners. So I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the process partners who are in the call to highlight why they're involved, why it's important to them, and what their hopes are and aims are for the process for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So I can see Robbie Byer from the Committee on the Regions. So Robbie, can I ask you to come in first? Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I just fixed my microphone. Yes, the Committee of the Regions, let me just say one word about the Committee of the Regions. That's the official voice of cities and regions in the policy-making process of the European Union. It is therefore strategic for us to be an important partner in the Edinburgh process to make sure that the voice is also heard at global level. So I myself, I'm a member and vice chair of this Committee of the Regions, and you must know that in the European Union, 70% of the legislation is implemented by cities and regions. It is therefore very important that European cities and regions participate in this Edinburgh process, because it will contribute to shaping the post-2020 global biodiversity framework that will in turn define the strategy for biodiversity of the European Union to 2030. We need a new strategy that recognizes the role of cities and subnational governments in the development, implementation and monitoring of biodiversity action, and we need the support of all subnational governments to do so. So I'm very pleased to be in this conference, because I am also designated rapporteur for the COP15 process, and I'm with colleagues from ICLE and Regions 4, we are trying to have a very strong position of the local subnational governments towards COP15 on biodiversity.
Thank you very much indeed, Robbie. Can I turn now to Karen Stothard from the Welsh Government? Karen, are you there?
I'm here, yes. Can everybody hear
Thank
me?
You.
Yes, well, Welsh Government welcomes the opportunity to be a partner in this Scottish process. We continue to recognise the huge importance of the subnational governments, cities and local authorities in the successful delivery of global agreements. State and regional governments are critical actors in addressing global challenges to biodiversity and climate change. They play a key role in delivering commitments under international agreements to the mitigation and adaptation of climate change, addressing biodiversity loss and delivering the Sustainable Development Goals. We are keen to contribute as part of this community in developing the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, co-developing a new 10-year subnational action plan for adoption at the COP15, and in ensuring onward future implementation for the benefit of nature and society.
Thank you very much, Karen. And can I now turn to Jean Lemaire from the Advisory Committee for Subnational Governments?
Yes,
Jean, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Thank you.
Well, bonjour tout le monde. J'espère que vous et vos familles allez bien. Well, I hope that you're all right. I first wish to thank the Government of Scotland to hold this workshop virtually, as we clearly see how important we have to address biodiversity loss and public health. I'm representing the Advisory Committee of Subnational Government for Biodiversity, a permanent structure that aims to bring the subnational government voice into the CBD. The committee is coordinated by Region 4 and the government of Quebec, and there are 20 members involved and 3 partner associations. The advisory committee has been actively engaged throughout the whole consultation and negotiation process for this ambitious new plan of nature. We believe this workshop is very important since the next biodiversity framework is intended to be inclusive and actively engage all levels of government. As we are currently working on a renewed and stepped up decision for local and subnational governments, we will be looking forward our exchanges and your contribution in the upcoming weeks. Because what we want is we want to be sure that we apply the same all of government approach that the one we are asking the CBD to put forward. Dear friends, we thought that 2020 would be a super year for biodiversity with the adoption of an ambitious new framework for nature. The same nature sent us a real and strong signal that we are more vulnerable than we thought. So let's make 2021 a great year for biodiversity. And for that, we have to work all together. So thank you very much to be here.
Excellent, thank you. I couldn't agree more. Can I now turn to Tero Kasuna from the group of leading subnational governments? Tero, are you there?
Thank you, Chair. I talk on behalf of GOLD, the group of leading subnational government toward biodiversity targets, now consisting 9 subnational governments of 7 countries in the world. In 2010, COP10 held in Aichi adopted the Aichi targets and also the plan of action on subnational governments for 2020. Subnational and local governments are pivotal players, especially in mainstreaming of biodiversity. We must expand our initiative further beyond 2020. Updating the plan of action and enhancing the support of the parties are essential for that. That is why GOLD support the Edinburgh process, which should provide the best opportunity for us to form our globally united voices to deliver to COP15. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teru. I'd like now to turn to, I think it's Holger Robrecht or Philip Lahula Walter. I'm not quite sure who is going to speak on behalf of the local governments for sustainability.
It's me. Thank you very much, Ian.
And thank you, Holger.
Thank you to the Scottish Government actually for engaging and leading actually for your leadership in this very, very important process. Dear ladies and gentlemen, for almost 20 years, ICLEI, with our global network of more than 1,700 local and regional governments, is leading together with its City Biodiversity Center and the engagement of important city members like Montreal or Barcelona or Bonn in the advocacy work on biodiversity from a local government perspective. And jointly with our friends from Regions 4, we also lead on the local and subnational government constituency as part of the CBD preparations and the roadmap towards COP15 hopefully in Kunming then next year. With many partners at national level, but also international level, such as the CBD Secretariat, IUCN, UNEP, the European Committee of the Regions. Hello, Robbie, to you. And also, of course, partners like Regions 4. We engage here in a process for more than 20 or almost 20 years, honestly, that includes the organization of, meanwhile, 6 editions of a global biodiversity summit of local and subnational governments that is always alongside with the CBD COPs since 2009 in Nagoya. We contribute to capacity building and global assessments on biodiversity through such as the Intergovernmental Platform of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, or the Global Biodiversity Outlooks at UN level. We also are involved in the CBD Secretariat's informal advisory group on biodiversity mainstreaming and coordinate the CBD Cities Advisory Committee, alongside also with our friends from Regions 4 that do the same work for the subnationals. Finally, we also engage in international standardization processes, which are not that known so far, but I believe firmly that this will be more important following the agreements on a global biodiversity framework post-2020. Particularly, I would like to hint at the fact that together with IUCN and the Nature Conservancy, we also host the Cities with Nature platform, which is endorsed as an official platform by CBD Secretariat for local and subnational governments to connect and report on their ambitions and their commitments to the action agenda for nature and people and the post-2020 global biodiversity framework, to raise awareness on the capacity and power actually of local and subnational governments to implement. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it has become very, very clear and obvious that the ambition to bend the curve in global biodiversity loss and to implement the ambition to live in harmony with nature by 2050 requires a multi-level governance approach and vertical collaboration that needs to recognize the unique position of local and subnational governments for the for ambitious and successful biodiversity action. It is in this spirit that we at ECLAI wholeheartedly support the Edinburgh process towards a strong subnational participation and representation in the post-2020 framework, including also through webinars, topical webinars like the one on nature-based solutions, forthcoming on 22nd of May in that same framework here, and the advocacy that we want to deliver together with our partners in Europe and globally to support the Edinburgh Declaration and take care of a strong engagement of local and subnationals in the post-2020 framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Holger, and to everybody who's contributed. And just to reiterate the huge gratitude there is from the Scottish Government to all the partners. And also, I think what you have all just said says two things to me. One is the importance of this venture. The second one, of course, is the fact that you are networked into a huge number of different organizations. We may have 42 participants on this call. It's a regional call, but you are networked into many, many more organizations. So there's a huge amount of influence from your participation. So thank you very much for that. I now need to move on, and we need to talk a bit more about what we're actually here for, which is the Edinburgh process. So I'm going to turn to Sue, who's going to take us through a description. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Ian. So obviously with the change in situation with COVID-19, it's meant that with our partners who have so eloquently spoken there previously, we've gone through several different plans for delivering engagement of subnational and local government input into the post-2020 framework development. So whilst we'd originally planned a 3-day physical workshop in Edinburgh at our world-renowned Royal Botanic Garden, which I know many of you were planning to attend, we've now been through several different plans before settling on this process, the Edinburgh process. And the new format is completely online, will include traditional consultation processes gained through written responses, and will host a range of online meetings and thematic webinars. And we hope that this online approach will still allow you all to fully participate in the process of the development of the post-2020 framework, even if it means that we can't all meet in our beautiful city of Edinburgh. This slide outlines the Edinburgh process timeline. It runs right up to COP15, which will be in Kunming in China, I understand, in the first half of 2021. and the important milestones are outlined on the slide there. So obviously, the first milestone is to have registered on Attendify, and you'll already have done this to be able to attend our online session here. I hope you've all had a chance to look at the documents that we've posted up onto Attendify, and have a look at the consultation documents, and have read through the zero draft of the post-2020 framework. The online sessions, which we'll be holding across this week in different regions, will be followed by a series of thematic webinars. And then we'll have another series of regional sessions to feed back on the consultations in late June. And then a final report of the Edinburgh process and our consultations will be submitted into upcoming CBD meetings. So for the thematic webinars, we'll be supplementing our online consultation process with these additional webinars over the next few weeks and covering the topics that are outlined here. These sessions, which are being coordinated and run with our process partners, will allow for more detailed technical discussions, and that might help inform your responses to our consultations. And the knowledge shared and the outputs created through those sessions will also inform our final report to the CBD. We'll be putting the links for these sessions up onto our Attendify app, and we'll also be recording these sessions so that you can view them over our YouTube channel. So I just wanted to also tell you a little bit about the technology that we're using. Obviously, we're using the Attendify app, and this is really to share information about the Edinburgh process. You all know it's free to use, and it can be accessed through a smartphone or via the browser on your computer. The smartphone application allows you to access more of the functionality of the app, but I know that for some people that's difficult to access. So the app contains all the information about all the sessions that we're holding, and we really encourage you to access the app and use it on a regular basis. It contains the schedule for the process, the speakers, our partner organisations. It will have links to the consultation documents. All the YouTube video links will be put there, and it's got links to various Twitter feeds. And we really encourage you to use it to keep up to date with the upcoming online sessions, and for any changes that we may need to make during the process. The advantage of the app, which the smartphone version allows you to do, is to access an activity stream, and this allows participants to post messages which can be commented upon, and participants can like the posts, and it will help us build up a community really throughout the Edinburgh process. The other thing the smartphone app does is allow you to connect to other participants, so it's possible to make contacts, new contacts or renew old contacts if you wanted to find out more information or follow up on questions or issues that have been shared. So please do use this app as much as you can, and we hope to be able to build our community through the use of this. As I mentioned, we've also developed a YouTube channel. We'll be videoing all of our online sessions, and so you can access those sessions through the YouTube channel. Those links will be posted up onto Attendify. There's also an excellent video presentation on the evidence base for the post-2020 framework, which has been recorded quite kindly for us by Andy Purvis from IPBES. And if you haven't watched it already, I really recommend that you do. It's a really interesting and thorough look at the evidence base. So there's also information there, further information on our partners on the YouTube channel. And we really hope that you enjoy using these. So I'll hand you back to Ian, who's going to go through the aims of the session.
Thank you very much, Sue. That's really helpful. And if you haven't downloaded the Attendify app, even I can do it. So if I can do it, then I can guarantee you can do it. I also would reflect that you know, since the present crisis has hit us, I have chaired quite a number of meetings in these sorts of formats, and that are starting to use some of these sorts of apps, and they have tremendous advantage over the kind of in-person process that we've been used to in the past. So we should make use of that advantage. So I would really strongly encourage everybody to use the app. You know, make their feelings known, share your ideas. I think it's a tremendous thing to be doing. So now we move on to the session aims. I mean, this is the first of a series of global online sessions, and it's been developed to introduce the consultative process for subnational and local governments on the role of CBDs post-2020 global biodiversity framework. The outputs of the consultation will feed directly into the development of the post-2020 framework and the associated subnational government planning for the next 10 years or so. The aims are set out here in the slide. We want to introduce the draft of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework, introduce the review of national, subnational plans of action, and the Edinburgh and introduce you to the Edinburgh Declaration as well. We want to also set out how you can get engaged, and Sue has already said quite a lot about that. And finally, we want to answer questions if we can possibly do that. So let's move on, Sue, to the next slide, which I think is about questions. So I would just before we move on, I just wonder, does anybody have any questions? And I think, Sue, we use the chat function for that. Is that right? Or the Attendify app, but I think it's the chat function that we're using at the moment. Is that right? You're muted, Sue.
There we go. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, we can use, I don't see that anybody has raised their hand using their participant function.
Does everybody know where the hand raise thing is? If you sort of hover over the bottom of the screen, you'll find a little icon showing participants as two people, one person standing behind the other. If you click on that, you get a list of all the participants, and at least on my screen, the bottom left hand side is a raise hand. If you want to speak, just click that, and it'll mean that I can see that you've raised your hand. Does anybody want to raise a hand?
I noticed that Elizabeth. Oh, hold on, Kasia.
Kasia.
I was just checking. Thank you.
All right.
You,
okay.
Kasia.
So that's a. I hope everybody's seen that. Kasia's just. So Robbie, you want to speak?
Yeah, I just have a question. Will we have all the details to download the app? Technical informations about that.
Sue, I think that's for you.
Yeah, so there was some information sent out by the Secretariat, by our Secretariat, to anybody that had expressed an interest on how to download the app. But if you want to send, if you're having problems accessing the app, if you get in touch with us at our inquiries mailbox, we'll be able to help you.
Yeah, because I'm quite interested in it. Seems to be a very good tool, yes, to stay in contact. Yeah. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So is it possible just to resend the instructions, or to put it out in some way so that people can pick up the link? We
could certainly send out the instructions. John might correct me, or Martha. I think there are instructions on identify. Well, actually, if you can't get identify,
you can't. You need.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. We can send them out. We would be able to send them out if anyone wanted to contact us directly.
I think it's worth resending it. It's really very easy. It's virtually a two-step process. It's click, and then to enter an access code, and the access code can be sent to you. Any other questions?
I think Elizabeth was asking about the access code, but we'll be able to send that directly to you if you contact us, Elizabeth.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
That's all of the questions I can see on the chat.
All right. Okay. No further questions. All right. Well, let's move onwards then. Next is we're going to move on to talking about the zero draft of the post-2020 framework, and I have the great pleasure of introducing Basil van Harve, who is the co-chair for the CBD open-ended working group, which is developing the framework. And I would like to invite Basil to give us an update on the process. So Basil, would you be able to come in? I think you're going to share your screen with us, is that right? Excellent, thank you. We can't hear you, Basil. Are you on mute? Basil, do you want to unmute? I'm assuming you're unmuting, or because I can't hear you. Right, great, thank you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, very well.
Okay.
So
Sorry
welcome,
about that.
and thank you very much.
Good day, everyone. I have a very short presentation, and I'll go through it relatively quickly. So delighted to be with you all. And I notice I know quite a few of you, which is a good thing, and I'm looking forward to get to know others through Attendify or other. So it's great to see this process moving forward, and as people have said, I think we're all learning through the use of technology, and really that's where we will be able to progress. In terms of, I want to give you a very quick update on the progress, and you see, you've seen version of this chart many times in the past. Apologies if it's getting boring, but really the process is into three phases. Phase one is around regional consultation, it's done. Phase two is thematic issues, and the fact that we're here now tell you that we're pathway through it. And actually, we started the negotiation already, and that phase three should be aligned with the February 24-29 time phase. A number of meetings have already taken place, but there is still a number to go. You see in light blue there, SEPSTA and SBI that are currently set for the second half of August. We'll see if we can hold that. There is possibility that may be delayed. But then following that, at the minimum of 9 weeks after that, and possibly more, there would be the third meeting of the open-ended working group in Cali in Colombia. And then again, at a minimum of 9 weeks after that, there would be the COP15 in Kunming in China. Stu talked about the first half of 2021. We've learned to be more careful, so we'll stay at 2021 without specifying any time at this point. But trust me, we're trying to do everything we can to make sure that this is done as fast as we can. You see below a number of smaller or pointier arrows with the thematic consultation. There is still a number that are ongoing, with the one on sustainable use will be fully online, and the one on synergy is half, 3/4 online, and a little bit in person together with SEPSTA. So still things are moving forward. If I move to the following slide, you will see a zoom in on the period between now and Substar. And that's probably very important for you, because I was looking at the schedule presented by, I think it was by Sue, and when you're going to have your recommendation and the availability of the various pieces. One important date is that around May 25, maybe plus or minus a couple of days, we will be issuing a package of document for Substar. And in that package of document, there would be a table with updated versions of goals and targets. And that is to be used by Substar to give us a scientific and technical validation. And that would be accompanied by monitoring elements, indicators, language on baseline, and links with the SDGs. This is going to be online for about 4 weeks, and everybody, including you, will be able to comment on that. And then we're going to be taking into consideration those comments and turning a new version of those documents a month later, and about July 6th. Like, we have 2 weeks to do the drafting, and that 2 weeks would be taking us to July 6th, which would be the normal 6 weeks ahead of a Substar meeting. So I heard about your July 10 deadline, which would be following. You would be, I don't want to say missing, but you would not be able to comment on the peer review process from May 25 to June 22. So you may want to think about that a little bit. And then after that, we have the Substar. We're going to be formally issuing draft 1.0 a couple of weeks after Substar and SBI, and then we're going to have the open and working group 3 in Cali. On the case for subject relevant to the SBI, the subsidiary body and implementation, which is resource mobilization, accountability, planning, and many other subjects, the process is a bit different. They've decided they're going to try to extend the review period for a longer period, so more than the 6 weeks, which is the minimum, and just extend it a little bit further so that you don't have that double process that exists. Now, moving a little bit and saying a few words about where we see you and what we hear in the discussion. I think those of you that have been in Nairobi heard very clearly there was absolutely no question about the role of subnational government in this process. There was not even a discussion in the session. It was a statement made and endorsed and agreed to by everybody. So that's a fundamental change, and a good one in our views. You have a role, and you have a primary role in many governments in many countries, including mine. The bulk of the responsibility for natural resource belongs to subnational government. Landscape, planning, protected and conserved area management, the acquisition of science, monitoring knowledge. And then you get into the issue of quality of life and health, and the focus on human people. Many comments, and you heard Jyoti a little bit earlier talking about the place of cities and the importance of cities. So definitely we're looking at a very important role there, one that's only going to be heightened by the current crisis. Finally, we're dealing directly with the direct drivers of biodiversity loss as identified by IPBES, but think about the indirect drivers: consumption, production, the distribution channels. All that is changed. Actually, I don't know about where you live, but where I live, this has fundamentally changed in the last weeks. Will we ever go back to the old? Do we want to go back to the old? A lot of people are quite happy with some aspects. Give them the social part of their life and they'll be happier than before. So let's think about how local governments, cities can accompany people in this period of change that is not necessarily over the short term. It may be very difficult and in difficult circumstances, but we may be building a different world. And in fact, what we're doing today may be a giant lab testing some of those ideas and trying them. So there is no question that your role is a very important one. Now let's talk about how you're going to be able to contribute. And Sue has provided you with this very strong and very good process that you will be following and engaging in. And I'm looking forward to get that event number for the app. What I want to give you is a couple advice. As you know, we're now in this phase of the negotiation where Francis and I are basically able to reflect the advice we're getting from SAPSTA, SDI, and from the parties. So the elements and the input we're receiving from others has to be channeled through those ways. So that's going to be very important that you collaborate, develop strong position, that you share those positions with parties. So make sure that, I think you're pretty good at that. I don't think there is any problem. So you need to find those like-minded parties. And the very important part is you be present at the negotiation session. You be present and intervene during the open-ended working group plenary session. And have a very strategic and organized way of presenting your views. So if people are aware of where subnational governments are standing and what are the views they want to take, that's going to be very, very powerful ways to get your views heard. So thank you very much. It's a very, very short presentation. Feel free to contact me directly or Francis. If you have more detailed question, we will try to attend and listen to your discussion. One thing about the online format is actually facilitating our participation, because in the old ways of traveling to places, there is only so many hours in a day and you have to make choice. Here it's a lot easier, and we can share with Francis depending on time zone. So thank you very much. Back to you.
And thank you very much, Basile, from us as well, because I think what you're doing is just a phenomenal job. There's an immense amount of work goes into these things. I know. If I can just amplify one of the things you said, which was about the current circumstances we're in. There are terrible things going on. It's a real challenge, but there are opportunities there as well. And getting the economy, the global economy, into a different state where there is more sustainable consumption is going to be one of the big tasks, I think, of the next few years. So this COP is coming along just at the right time, and your work is really contributing to that. So congratulations on that. I'd like to move on now to the next slide, which is about the zero draft structure. And I'd like to invite, I think Sue is going to do this, but is John or Sue? I'm not sure which one is going to do this now. But I'll hand over to one of you.
Thanks, Ryan. I'll take this part, and good afternoon, everybody. We just want to highlight that when you are considering the consultation document on the zero draft that we've shared through Attendify, there's a number of issues. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with the structure of the zero draft and how it's set out, but we just wanted to highlight a few points while we're talking today. And that's first, that it is divided into two parts, and I'm sure a lot of people will focus on the goals and targets, but the monitoring framework is an equally important part of the zero draft, and has some of the elements. I know there may be some detail that people are looking for in the goals might be contained in the monitoring framework, and there's obviously a discussion about where those sit, but I think it's important that they're looked at as one document and taken into consideration. The zero draft itself is split into different sections. So those of you familiar, in part 2 of the zero draft, sections B and D set out the goals and the action targets that will be adopted by states. And then sections E and H relate more to the enabling conditions, resource mobilization, monitoring, reporting, and communication. And you'll be asked to comment on these sections in the online consultation. So each goal and target has the associated elements for monitoring, and you should take this into account. And I think what Basile has highlighted is the negotiation is ongoing in terms of the language and the negotiations between parties at the moment. So we're not looking for the detailed language in your submissions on the consultation, but rather we're seeking the general views on the suitability of the goals and targets, any gaps or areas where you think it can be improved from the subnational perspective. And considering particularly the monitoring framework and its indicators, it's worth to bear in mind that one of the fundamental principles of the convention is the application of the ecosystem approach, which was adopted and endorsed by the parties in decision 5/6 in 2000. And one of the key principles, Principle 2, sets out that management should be decentralized to the lowest appropriate level. And this is aimed at achieving greater efficiency, effectiveness, equality, involving all stakeholders, using local knowledge and encouraging greater ownership and participation. So this is a fundamental approach that we need to take through this process. And also bear in mind that while the targets remain high level, the indicators and monitoring needed should be specific. If we can just move on, Sue, to the next slide. So if you go on to the Attendify app in document 2, you'll find the consultation document itself. It's fairly straightforward to use. Once you go into the document, you will find guidance and information there. You can respond through an online Google form, which will take you through a series of questions to answer on behalf of your organization. And the consultation will be open until the 29th of May for you to respond. So please have a look through that, read the information, and send us your views through that online form.
John, thank you very much indeed. That's hugely helpful. So, I thought we were moving on to questions now, but obviously not. We've got.
We go back a slide.
Are we moving to questions?
Yes, there are. There is a slide missing. Sorry.
All right. Okay. So can I invite you to ask any questions that you have around this process? Obviously, if you have questions that you come up with in due course after this meeting, then you can send them in, or you can use Attendify to get an answer to those questions. But just to give you a little bit of stimulus, you know, the sort of questions that I think we probably need to address are whether you think that the 2030 goals, mission and action targets address the key biodiversity issues for subnational governments. You know, whether we're actually going to be doing that, and do you think the level of ambition is sufficient to deliver the requirements for nature and people at subnational level? Do you consider that the accompanying monitoring framework is sufficient to allow effective monitoring of the action targets at subnational level? And do you think the elements on implementation and capacity building provide a sufficient framework for subnational level implementation of the framework? So they're just sort of kind of ideas that are sitting there to try and sort of whet your appetite about the sorts of questions that there might be. And you know, you could ask those questions through the process. But does anybody have any immediate questions that they would like to ask?
Don't see any hands that are raised.
No hands raised. It's all crystal clear, obviously.
And of course, this is an excellent opportunity to ask Basile any questions or comments you might have, because we're lucky enough to have
absolutely.
him join the
yeah, definitely. I mean, I would encourage everybody to try to use the Attendify app to contact other people and to get discussion going. but if there's anything in terms of clarification of what has been said so far, then stick your hand up. And if not, I suspect that we've all been so clear that everybody understands everything. So that's wonderful. So in that case, let's move on.
And,
oh, have we got one?
There's just one question come up through the chat.
Through the chat, right. Can you read it out, Sue? Rather than me try to find it.
Yeah, Dave Barlow has asked how much of a priority are cities and city regions in delivering the framework?
So I don't know who is going to answer that question. Is it Basil? Basil, you've got your hand up. That'd be great.
No, I can start, and I'm sure others will react. I would say it's really depend on how the governance is set up in each country. In many countries, the city and city region have a key role in delivering. For example, if you have a target that is about providing easy access to a green or blue area, and you have parameters in terms of distance, etc., there is a key role for city and region in terms of how they're planning and structuring their land use planning, their transport, etc., in enabling that. It's I would say, and if there is, that there is in the current draft, and you should not be surprised if it's still there in the future, there will be a targets around planning and how we make choice. Again, local authorities have a key role in making that happen. So I think each country have different ways on engaging with province and with subnational entities and regional governments, etc. But definitely, I do not see a successful framework that would not engage the authorities that are acting at the local level. That's a very important characteristic. Thank you.
Basil, thank you very much. Any other questions? I mean, I would just like to back up what Basil said. I can't see a framework like this really operating terribly effectively without some of the major cities being, or a lot of the major cities actually being very engaged with it. And I see Dave is from Manchester, so that's certainly one city that we welcome being engaged with it. No other questions. All right. In that case, let's move on, and we're moving to the subnational plan of action, this is part of the session that will focus on the review of the updating of the plan of action of subnational governments, cities, and local authorities, which was previously adopted in COP10 in Nagoya and will end this year. So I'd like to invite Ingrid Kutzi from the Local Government Sustainability ICLEI to take us through this section, if at all possible. Or is it Philippe?
Yeah, it's actually me.
All right, great, Philip, welcome. Sorry, I'll say I have notes here, and one part of the note said it was you, and the other part said it was Ingrid. So that's why I got confused.
No worries at all.
So over to you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So good morning to our North American partners and friends, and good morning to our good evening to our European partners and friends. It's great to also hear colleagues like Togo Ochida, the director of the ICLEI Japan office, and Timothy Blatch from our City Biodiversity Center of ICLEI in South Africa. And then also strong partners in local biodiversity actions, such as Susanne Nolden from the city of Bonn. So welcome everybody, and thanks for having us here. I also don't want to miss the opportunity to applaud our hosts from the Scottish Government for their endurance to pull together this crucial event in such turbulent times. So thanks so much for your endurance and patience. in this process. It was quite a ride until the last minutes, literally. So on that picture here, you see mayors and local government leaders actually encouraging parties to adopt a plan of action on cities at a local government press conference held at the CBD COP10 venue. And what we have been doing, next slide, please. What we have been doing is asking the question, what did the current plan of action achieve, and was it actually worth it? So ICLEI coordinated a desktop review of achievements achieved over the past decade since the adoption of the plan of action at COP10. And highlighting the achievements attributed directly and indirectly to the adoption of the plan of action. The review also captures what elements of the current plan of action worked and what did not. And it builds on work done at different levels by many different actors at global, national, subnational, and local levels. So national governments, cities, subnational governments, and so forth, were all part of our review here. And it includes a wide range of initiatives and activities. So I highly encourage you all to take a look. It's already on the Attendify app. You can just click on it and look at it on your phone or on your computer. It's right there. We also have to thank very much, it was a real collaborative effort, our partners in helping out with this, like the European Committee of the Region, ACSNG, and GOLS. So thanks a lot. Next slide, please. In that document, you will see a review of past achievement as mentioned, and they really built a compelling case for more active participation of local subnational governments, just like has been mentioned now a few times. And it really calls for an integral part of government, of local and subnational government in the implementation, monitoring and reporting of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. So it's really meant as a one-stop shop when it comes to giving the concrete arguments why subnational and local governments need to play a strong role here. So this leads to a call for a dedicated decision on the role and contribution of local and subnational governments in the new global biodiversity framework, a renewed and significantly stepped up plan of action, which is the next step basically. And then it also provides clear and strong reference to active participation by local and subnational governments. So it's a really nice summarizing documents of all these achievements and arguments, really. I also want to reference here the 10-point framework for local and subnational action that was coordinated by ICLEI and supported by Committee of the Regions, Advisory Committee on Subnational Governments, Regions 4, Government of Quebec, and the group of leading subnational governments to the Aichi biodiversity targets. Also a very important document when it comes to guidance on elements for local and subnational government participation and how it could be included in the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. So I encourage to check this out as well. Next slide, please. Further looking forward, now we come to a few conclusions that we made during the process of this review and in creating this document. And I'm just going to mention a few here that try to summarize what you will find in that document. So that includes realistic and feasible objectives and targets for local and subnational governments in making contributions to national biodiversity strategies and action plans, sustainable development goals, and other global agendas, obviously, such as fighting the climate crisis as well. Mobilization and distribution of resources for increased investment in biodiversity action at subnational and local levels. So we're looking at public sector and private sector investments here. And then the need for support to improve decision-making through a better access to biodiversity data, monitoring system that facilitates data collection, and then also supporting the feedback on progress towards attaining the biodiversity goals and targets. Also want to highlight here one more time the Cities with Nature commitment platform that was already mentioned by Holger, that really creates this one-stop shop for tracking those commitments and progress of local governments towards biodiversity action. Mainstreaming biodiversity at subnational and local levels also came up a few times before. Multi-level governance is really crucial now. It has been very clear in our view. Capacity building for subnational and local governments, tailoring SEPA, as in communicating, educating, and raising awareness initiatives, an instrument to the subnational and local contexts. And then it points out a few next steps. Contributions gathered through Edinburgh process will be incorporated into a report and then presented in the second online regional information sessions, which, if that's still correct, it will happen in the week of 29th of June. And then it will also be submitted to the SCBD, the Secretariat of the CBD in July. And then last but not least, also to the subsidiary body on implementation, of which its third meeting is scheduled to take place in Montreal in the week of 24th to 28th of August this year. Next slide, please. And that was already it. I tried to make it really brief considering the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think that was very clear. And I've just had a sign to say my internet's unstable. I hope everybody can hear me. What I'd like to do is see if anybody has any questions, based mainly on what you've said, but if anybody has thought of any other questions from previous sections of this this discussion, then please do ask them. So use the raise hand if you can. If you can't, use the chat. Nothing so far. Sue, yeah. Do you see anything?
I don't see any raised hands.
Right.
I guess just as we're talking through this, but Basile highlighted in his slides the timetable for the SBI meeting and the SBSTA meeting, and so we'll need to, I think, take that away and have a think about our timeline and how the consultation feeds in. So I just wanted to highlight that at this stage, because it's obviously come up with both the framework and the plan of action. And so it's been really useful to see that, and for us to think about that and how we manage this process to make sure that it stays meaningful and can contribute.
And I think following following Basile's input about looking to work together to highlight this through state parties, particularly for the subnational plan of action, which needs to be submitted along with a draft decision to SPI. We'll be working with state parties to try and build a coalition of interested parties that will be willing to support that when it comes forward, so that it can be taken into the CBD process. And that is something that will be going on in parallel to having everybody on the call here go and look at the consultation document, provide us our comments on the review and on what they feel should be in the new plan of action, and we'll be able to take that on board and then move forward as we go on towards SPI and then ultimately COP next year.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, there's a bit of a challenge in the timeline there. So yeah, we'll obviously have to think about that and think very hard about it and adapt. Any other questions from anybody?
There's nothing coming up in the chat yet.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I suggest that that we move on and we move on to the Edinburgh Declaration. So it's for me really to introduce this, and the Edinburgh Declaration is a political declaration that will represent the high-level aims of subnational and local governments for the post-2020 framework. The Scottish Government and the process partners involved have co-developed the draft Edinburgh Declaration for consideration by subnational governments, and we hope for the eventual adoption by many of you and others who will be on other calls later in the week as well. The declaration highlights the role of subnational governments, cities and local authorities, along with other stakeholders, as key partners in the implementation of the framework, and highlights the key role that they play in reducing threats to biodiversity, meeting people's needs through sustainable use and benefit sharing, developing the right tools and solutions, and their actions in implementing and mainstreaming biodiversity across all levels ensure that support mechanisms and enabling conditions are in place to deliver upon final targets. Delivery at the end of the day is what's really important. So the Edinburgh Declaration itself, the draft declaration will shortly be open for comment via the document section in the Attendify app, and will be open till 29th May. After that date, the Scottish Government and Edinburgh Process Partners will finalise and sign the declaration so that it can be submitted to the CBD. However, it will remain open for signature by subnational governments right up to COP15, and we would ask that participants share it widely and encourage as many subnational and local governments as possible to sign up, as this will increase its weight and influence. Our aim is to present the declaration as a side event at COP15, highlighting the Edinburgh process and the support we have gathered over the time to COP15. So I hope that is reasonably clear. Is there anything else, Sue, that you want to add, or John want to add to this before we move into questions?
Just to say on this, we will probably make after the 29th of May, make the final version of the declaration available through the Attendify app. We're still working on exactly how we'll share it wider than that. We have some challenges caused by COVID, because our website for this process was being hosted by the Royal Botanic Gardens, but their staff are now off on furlough. As with all these, we'll overcome that technical challenge, but we'll highlight any information on that in the future through the Attendify app.
Okay, thank you.
Basil has
very good.
Yeah, Basil has his hand.
So Basil, you've got a question, please. Go on.
Two questions actually. One, is you may want to think about a number of events that will take place outside of the formal CBD process, but are important. The UN General Assembly Biodiversity Summit in September will be an important point and maybe an opportunity for the declaration to be showcased. And second, there is the IUCN Wild Conservation Congress with a set date now in January, which also will be an important place. So, you may want to think about that. And second, I see on the slide that you were talking about a side event at COP15. Remember, we're trying to position the framework as a framework for all. So I would be delighted if we can arrange for the contribution and the engagement of subnational government to be not on the side, but on the front stage together with the others. So that's my personal hope and my commitment to work toward. Thank you.
That would be fantastic. I think that's an aspiration we should try to meet, if at all possible. So thank you very much for that, Basile. I mean, I think the suggestions about using this in other forums as well is a very powerful one too. So we should take that away and see what we can do about that. I mean, I don't know either Sue or John, do you want to respond to any of those sort of things? You don't need to respond, but if there anything you want to say?
They are on our radar, and well, certainly the IUCN event was on our radar before now. And there are things like European Green Week, which we had been thinking of as well. So obviously we're speaking with the Committee of the Regions about how we can look at any events that are happening within Europe. Yeah, so those are both useful. And at SubSTA and SBI as well, we should be making use of those opportunities as they arise. So thanks for highlighting those other events, Basile. Very helpful.
Very good. Any other questions? Oh, there's a question from Holger. Holger, please.
Thank you, Ian. It's actually not a question, but a supplement here. For the European region, we look forward to the European Sustainable Cities and Towns Conference that will take place 29 of September to 1st of October, which will definitely also include in prominent manner the promotion of the Edinburgh Declaration. I think we had included this also in the list of events, and I would like to mention here that we will welcome approximately 1,000 to 1,500 participants. Now we consider still if that is going to be a physical meeting or an online meeting, like your example is showing that works, and it might actually have a larger reach out. The second option I want to make is here that we will have, or a second announcement is that we will have also the European Week of Cities and Regions. I think now it is mentioned also by Roberto Rinaldi in the chat. And a last one is that we always organize the Global Biodiversity Summits for local and subnational governments. And obviously this is also, if we were to be successful in implementing it also next year at the COP15, we would be more than happy to also have the Edinburgh Declaration in prominent place there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Holger. I see Roberto Rinaldi has also put something up on the chat, which I think is that similar to what the point you were making, Holger?
Yes.
I don't know if you.
Yes, it's one of the 3 events I mentioned. Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. Good. Any other points or questions? No. Okay. Right. And just to remind you, we have the Attendify app to go back to if you have any things that come to your mind in due course. So the next thing is the next steps. So where are we going next? So we want to outline next steps in the Edinburgh process, starting with a video statement from Oliver Hillel of the CBD Secretariat on how the outcomes of the Edinburgh process will be used. So I'm not sure we'll be able to see the video, we may hear it. Oh, we might see it.
You might, oh, hold on, this was technically challenging. Let's see. There we go.
Hello, my name is Oliver Hillel, and I'm a program officer in the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity based in Montreal, Canada. I'd like to thank the Government of Scotland, particularly the Directorate for Environment and Forestry and Energy and Climate Change, for the initiative of organizing this Edinburgh consultation as a web-based process. I'd also like to thank the United Kingdom, ICLE, Regions for, and the group of leading subnational governments for the Aichi biodiversity targets as co-organizers of this web consultation. And I'd like to share with you a few words from the perspective of the Convention on Biological Diversity. First, I'd like to share with you 4 ways in which the outcomes of the Edinburgh process can lead and contribute to the Convention. The first one is, of course, our post-2020 instrument, the Global Covenant for the next 10 years and beyond, which relates to all the Sustainable Development Goals. The current framework already includes a lot of options for the engagement of subnational and local governments in targets, for instance, 4, which relates to pollution, 5 and 7, which relate to wildlife and wild species. A lot of that has to do with urbanization. Target 8 on agriculture and other productive landscapes, 9 on water, and 10, which is about the health value of green space and has a specific chapter about cities. Clearly, mainstreaming, which goes from targets 12, 13, 14, 17, and 18, all of them involve multi-level governance, the cooperation between governments. Second, it's the second way in which this consultation can lead or help is that subnational local issues have been incorporated into the long-term approach on mainstreaming and other parallel processes, such as, for instance, restoration, capacity building, and communications. We need to make sure that the point of view of subnational and local governments is considered also, for instance, on resource mobilization, monitoring by the use of the Singapore Index for Cities Biodiversity. The third process is that parties may consider a complementary decision under item 11, which is the item on mainstreaming, as the agenda proposed for the 3rd meeting of the subsidiary body on implementation, which is now scheduled from the 24th to the 29th of August in Montreal. So the idea is that all the lessons learned in implementing Decision 1022, which adopts a plan of action for the engagement of those level of governments, what are the lessons learned? How can we go and strengthen the post-2020 based on that decision through a specific decision for SBI3? And the last mechanism is your personal contribution to the 15th conference of the parties, which is currently more or less rescheduled for the 1st or 2nd quarter of 2021, still in Kunming in China. So when that happens, there will not only be the conference, but there will be the 7th parallel summit of cities and subnational governments, which is hosted by the city of Kunming and by the province of Yunnan, along with the government of China. So we hope to see you in these 4 processes. Finally, I'd like just to leave, in the last week, we've been discussing a lot in the Secretariat, the issue, of course, of the COVID-19 crisis. And I'd like to think that the discussions we've had have a lot of impact on what the Edinburgh process will be discussing. So there's 3 aspects of this crisis which I would like you to consider. The first one, it's clear that this comes from the imbalances on the management of nature. We know the origin of pandemics, so we know this has to do with unsustainable contact with wildlife and domestic animals. So clear that nature cannot be ignored as we try to imagine what are the groups and what are the ways that we can avoid this crisis again. We have to factor nature into it. The second point is that we are seeing that it is exactly the level of local and subnational governance that is helping people a lot in these times. So it has become even more clear that the harmonization of policy along the vertical mainstreaming axis is essential. We need to make sure that national, federal governments are saying the same things as subnational and local, as well as global, as in the UN. So this is another point that has become very clear that might lead you to additional reflections. And the last one is that obviously the big opportunity will be the reinvestment, the restart of our economies after the COVID crisis. That's when we need to be the greenest possible. That's when we cannot afford to lose the opportunity to do things better. So it's a question of the repackaging of a reinvestment for post-COVID. With these thoughts, I'd like to leave you to consider the ways and means in which incorporating nature can help us build a stronger post-2020 global biodiversity framework. From the Secretariat, we thank you and we hope you can enjoy the webinar.
That's great, and you know, I think there's some really wise words there from Oliver about actually the pivotal moment that we're at the moment. You know, we could go, we're at a fork in the road. We could go down a road which is simply just doing things in the same old way, or we could take quite a new direction. And so this process and this declaration is coming at just the right time. And what's more, it's subnational governments and institutions within nations that have to implement the measures that that we have to take to make those changes that Oliver was talking about. So thank you very much indeed. So we really want to move on now to just come to you know, a summary. So you know, before we finalize the session, I'd just like to highlight and summarize the key outputs of the Edinburgh process, which we've touched on throughout the presentation. There are three main outputs which are on the slide here. Firstly, the Edinburgh process report that will be finalised in time to submit to the subsidiary body on scientific technology and scientific, technical and technological advice, and also the open-ended working group. This report will cover the whole process we've just outlined, but will mostly describe the outputs of this consultation on the zero draft and the monitoring framework. Secondly, there will be an updated plan of action for subnational and local governments that will be submitted to SBI3 in Montreal, 24th to 29th August, and for adoption at COP15. And finally, there is the Edinburgh Declaration itself, which we will submit to the open-ended working group and will be open for signature until COP15. Through all of these outputs, we are looking to set out the importance of subnational governments, cities and local authorities in implementing and delivering positive and transformative actions for global biodiversity. We come to the sort of closing part of this, and what I'd just like to reiterate, many people have said it through this meeting. Your inputs are critical in shaping these three outputs that we've just talked about, and we urge you to comment on all three of the consultations which are now open. The thematic webinars that were described earlier on are running over a longer time frame, and you will get more information about them through Attendify. We'll share information on the consultation feedback regional sessions in due course, again through Attendify. And finally, please do regularly check Attendify and turn on your notifications as we'll be using this as our main information channel for updates and information on the Edinburgh process. So if you, as I did, go into Attendify and then switch off notifications when you're asked about it, don't do that. And I'm going to have to go back in and switch them on. Finally, it just remains for me to thank you all thank you all for attending, and particularly to thank the speakers today. This has been obviously an online session. I hope it's fulfilled your objectives. We've obviously tried to outline the Edinburgh process for subnational local governments. For any more information, go to Attendify. We'll keep repeating that. And if you know of any other subnational local governments not currently involved in the Edinburgh process, please encourage them to get in touch on the email below. And we can give them, we can sign them in, and we can give them all the details that, that they require. The more who are involved in this, the better, and many of you will be networked into other subnational governments or cities or regions which are not attending, are not aware of this at the moment, and who would probably benefit hugely from it. Finally, I would just like to say a personal note of thanks to the team that managed to put all this together. They had to pivot very dramatically from an in-person meeting in Edinburgh at the Royal Botanic Gardens to this online format, which is, you know, for all of us is an experiment. I think it works very well. It also fulfills many of the objectives of the Edinburgh process, in that we're not burning fossil fuels to get to a meeting, and we're operating very, very efficiently. So, you know, I hope that this is a kind of format that we will obviously get better and better at these sorts of things. But I hope that this is a kind of format that we can use in future. It encourages attendance as well. It makes it easier for people, and we save the environment at the same time. So with that, I'm just actually going to very quickly turn to John and Sue, just in case they have got any closing remarks, because as a chair, I almost always forget something vital to say at the end. But is there anything I've forgotten?
I don't think so, except to say that we have our own Twitter handle for the process, and that we had a bit of a technical issue, so it was supposed to be on this last slide. It's in the Attendify feed, if you can find it, but it's post 2020 Edinburgh, all one word. So if you feel like you want to tweet, then you can use that handle, and it will feed into the Attendify app as well. But I'd just like to thank all the contributors. It's been really a steep learning curve for us to develop this process. So thanks particular to Basil for joining us at the last minute. We really appreciate it. And thanks to you, Ian, for hosting this. Great
pleasure.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, everybody, I think that's it. And I think we do the wave and say thank you very much. Wonderful meeting you. Meet you again soon, and bye-bye.